I'm pleased to be joined by former State Representative Dan Severson. Mr. Severson, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Adam. It's great to be on with you.
Now, you are vying for the nomination to challenge Ms. Klobuchar for the U.S. Senate.
That's correct.
Why did you get into this race?
Well, I think, I bring to the table some experience. I think I've run a statewide race previously. I've been in the legislature, been in the military, been in the private sector, and I think probably more compelling than all of that is Washington is broken. We have to change things the way the things that have been happening in Washington or have not been happening, probably more to the point. And I think there needs to be a sincere representation in the issues that are going to fix America, not just push it down the road.
Now, how much would you say your previous experience would help or benefit you for this run?
Well, I was in the Navy, flew Navy fighters 22 years, was in executive positions there in the Navy, whether it was a F-18 squadron, a weapons test squadron, 3 years in Washington, D.C., and then got into the private sector, worked on a patent in the private sector, and then got elected to the Minnesota House for 4 terms in the last 2 years as the minority whip, where we held back $3.2 billion in taxes. And I think that kind of plays to the issues that are at hand today. We can't fix our economy by raising taxes. We have to create private sector jobs. And I believe that's where the experience lies in this process, is being in the arena, having worked at the state level on legislative issues, having been a little bit in the private sector. And I can tell you that we cannot continue to spend our way out of this process. With a $15.5 trillion budget debt, with a debt of $15.5 trillion, we've got to change the way we do things. We've got to begin to take back the future for not just us and our children, but our children's children. So that's part of this process.
What would you say is the biggest issue that it's really facing us Americans today?
Well, it's relevant to everybody that goes to campus, goes to school here on campus, and I think it's when you get out and you've accrued a fair amount of student loans, where are the job opportunities? Where are the things that are actually going to give you the ability to have a future? And so with the Keynesian economics, the things that have been pushed through this administration, through Senator Klobuchar, I think you've got to step back and say, look, instead of peddling a lot of menial bills, let's fix our budget. Let's fix the way we spend dollars. Let's fix our economy first by creating jobs in the private sector. Part of that is to repeal Obamacare. We've got to get rid of that killing machine that is going to take out 800,000 jobs when it's fully implemented in 2013. And just last week, the CBO came out and said it's going to cost twice as much as it was originally estimated. So it's not only a job killer, but it's cutting into our freedoms. And when you start to talk about what it's doing to our Constitution, whether it's the First Amendment rights, which you saw just a couple weeks ago, the big controversy on abortion pill contraceptives, forcing that into the religious sector, into those nonprofit organizations that serve, whether it's medical or just a religious side of things, and they're being forced to provide those contraceptives against their own conscience in direct violation of the First Amendment, or whether it's the 10th Amendment, which deals with the Commerce Clause that says only those things that are delegated to the federal government in the Constitution are for the federal government to enforce. Well, there's nothing in there that talks about the government being the sole arbiter of health insurance. And so, and the whole issue with the Commerce Clause, which the Supreme Court will be ruling on in the not too distant future. But the bottom line is, we have an administration and a Senate that has been stepping all over our constitutional rights, and they have been ignoring the voice of the people, saying, you know what, we want less government intrusion, not more. We want our rights that are given to us by our founding fathers, by our Constitution. And we don't want you as big government people telling us what to do.
Now, I know you also recently came up with a solution to the Federal Reserve. Would you like to speak about that?
Yeah, I just finished a book calling Get Rid of the Federal Reserve and the Fed. And it is a very well-written book, and it really lays out a great case for the Feds really manipulating our money supply. Until 1971, I believe it was 71, that our money supply was based on a gold standard. And once it came off that gold standard, then you've got these huge fluctuations, or the inflation that's taking place, because the Fed is regulating the interest rate and they're regulating the monetary supply. Well, when you have the Fed keeping an unrealistically low interest rate and then printing money, and we've got a deficit of $1.4 trillion, 1.2 to 1.4, and they're printing the money to actually meet that deficit, and we're borrowing money to foreign countries that do not have our best interests at hand. What does that do to the security, national security, number one, but what does that do to the money in your pocket? It devalues it. And so we have the Fed, who is it has no oversight whatsoever. The Congress is supposed to have oversight over the money supply, and the Feds basically are unanswerable to the Congress. It's a huge problem. And so when the hard questions are asked to the Feds, they say, well, you don't really need to know that. Well, no, we are the people, and you govern by consent of the governed. So you have a responsibility to tell us what you're doing with our money supply, and whether we like it or not, you know, by the Constitution, you need to adhere to the things that were given to us by our founding fathers. So, you know what? To my estimation, the Fed needs to be audited, and when we find out that, and I believe that we will find out that there's been a lot of loans given out to other countries with no interest, substantial amounts, or to other special interests, and we, the taxpayers, are paying for that through the devaluation of our dollar, we need to hold them accountable, and we need to prosecute those people who have been abusing their power in the Fed.
What would be the first thing you do if you were elected to Congress?
Well, I think the first thing we do is we build a coalition in the Senate. And we basically come together, and I want to find like-minded people, and I know there's some there now, who can begin to band together and put together a plan that says, okay, how do we begin to drive this fiscal train to put it in right order? Now, Paul Ryan from Wisconsin has put together a great plan that was put forward to the Senate, and the Senate refused to hear it. You don't hear Senator Klobuchar saying anything about that plan. In fact, when she did say something, she said, well, you know, Ryan's plan is pushing this little old lady off the cliff in a wheelchair. Well, not really. I mean, take a look at the plan, Senator Klobuchar, because it really did nothing to those people that were over 55 on Social Security. And there's going to have to be some reforms in the entitlement program. Otherwise, we're going to continue to grow, and our Social Security goes insolvent in the not too distant future if we don't take action on this process. So part of this plan is to look at the Ryan plan, take that up and tweak it. I think that it's doable. It may cause some pain, but we're going to have to experience some pain in this process. The other is the cut, cap, and balance plan that was put forward. And so I think the Senate has the tools it needs right now to do the job, but the Senate is not doing their job. The Congress that we elected in 2010 came up with some very substantial, comprehensive plans to actually fix our budget. And yet the Senate, with Harry Reid, Senator Klobuchar, Senator Franklin are doing absolutely nothing to fix that. They're just ignoring it, saying, you know, we don't want to hear anything. In fact, it's been almost 3 years since the Senate has passed a budget. Now, when you have an employee working for you, and their primary job is to do a budget and is to make sure that we have not just national security, but we have a monetary supply that is somewhat fiscally sound, if they don't do it, if they just kind of check out for 3 years, what do you do with them? My estimation is you fire them. You say, you know what, if you can't do the job, we'll find somebody else who can. And that's what I believe the overarching message is going to be this fall, that with a dysfunctional Senate, we have a Congress that has done their job. They've got 28 jobs bills that are sitting at the desk of Harry Reid. And Harry Reid says, no, we're not going to hear it. And you don't hear Senator Klobuchar jumping up and down saying, you know, Harry, why don't you hear those bills? Let's get some jobs. Let's get some private sector jobs moving. She's just pushing on with her own agenda, which has solutions for bigger government, more government spending. And so I think that in order to solve those problems, we get together a coalition within the Senate, and we begin to push this agenda, bring it out to the American people, and say, you know what, we believe that the answer to this problem is through private sector job growth.
Well, sir, thank you very much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Adam. I appreciate you having me on. It's been a pleasure.
Not a problem. We'll be back with more right after this.